I wasn't supposed to be in the office that late. The fluorescent lights hummed with that low, electrical fatigue that settles in after hours, when most people have gone home and the air smells faintly of coffee and printer toner. I'd stayed behind to finish a report that wasn't due until Monday. More out of habit than necessity. Staying busy makes silence feel less personal. Through the glass wall of her office I could see her. Miss Tanaka. She was leaning slightly forward, glasses halfway down her nose, one hand holding a pen she hadn't moved in a while. Her desk was immaculate except for a mug with a chipped rim and a stack of folders arranged in perfect diagonals. The kind of order that comes from needing to keep something inside from slipping out. I liked watching how still she could be. Not in a creepy way, I told myself, just curious. People my age fidget, she didn't. When she finally looked up and caught my eye, I pretended to be typing. Too late, she smiled, just a small one, polite, but it held too long, like it had remembered something. Still here, she said, stepping out of her office a few minutes later, file in hand. Her voice had that calm authority that made you want to apologize for existing. Just wrapping up. Sem. She set the file on my desk and leaned a little on the edge. You're new, right? Been here 3 weeks. 4, I said. But I still get lost on the second floor. That made her laugh, quietly. Not the polite kind, but the real kind that catches her off guard. She folded her arms, then unfolded them again, as if remembering something she didn't mean to said. You'll learn, she said. Everyone does. Eventually. Her phone buzzed, but she didn't check it. The sound sat between us like a reminder that her world extended beyond this fluorescent island. I noticed the fine line of her collarbone when she tilted her head. The faint creases around her mouth that softened when she smiled. I caught myself studying her hands, how she rubbed her thumb against her pen cap without noticing. She noticed me noticing. Do you want some tea? She asked, breaking the air with a tone too light to be casual. Tea? I blinked.
Yeah.
She walked to the small kitchenette. I followed, though I pretended I needed to throw something away. She poured hot water into 2 chipped mugs, the steam fogging her glasses. You take sugar? 1, I said, then added, you remember that. She gave a small smile. I pay attention. That line hit harder than it should have. Most people don't. We stood side by side in the kind of silence that feels like a decision. I stirred my tea longer than necessary, watching the string of the tea bag circle the cup. She tapped her spoon once against the sink and said, almost to herself, sometimes, I think people stay late just to avoid going home. I didn't answer. She didn't need me to. Later, as she gathered her bag and closed her office door, I saw her pause. She turned eyes softer now. Good work today, she said. Then, after a heartbeat, don't make a habit of it. Her smile lingered a second too long. After she left, I sat there for a while, staring at the steam rising from her untouched mug. My phone buzzed on the desk. A text from an unknown number. You forgot your notebook, no signature, just that, and somehow, that felt like the start of something I wasn't ready for. The next morning, the notebook was sitting on my desk before I arrived. No note, no explanation, just the same spiral-bound pad placed neatly beside my keyboard. Her handwriting was on a yellow sticky note attached to the cover. You left this behind. It was barely a gesture, but it said enough. I sat there for a few seconds, tracing the faint press of her pen through the paper. I caught her in her office later that day, going over expense sheets. Thanks for returning it, I said, leaning slightly against the doorframe. She didn't look up immediately. You're welcome. You really shouldn't leave things in my office, you know. Her tone was teasing, but it landed in that uncertain space between warmth and warning. I'll try not to, I said. But it seems like a safe place to forget things. That earned a glance, brief but knowing. She closed the file, as if conceding the moment. We shared tea again that afternoon. She'd started keeping an extra mug on her desk, a quiet acknowledgement neither of us mentioned. The tea was jasmine this time, lighter, floral. I wondered if that meant something. She sighed, rubbing the edge of her thumb along the rim of her cup. My ex-husband hated this kind, she said, almost absent-mindedly. Said it smelled like soap. I looked up. You're divorced. Her eyes flicked to mine. I am. Then softer, for years now. The room settled into silence. There was no sadness in her tone, just a small matter of fact quiet that made it heavier. I wanted to say something comforting, but everything that came to mind felt too large for the space between us. So I nodded, pretending to understand a kind of loneliness I'd only ever brushed against. Later, she asked me to help carry a box of archived files to the storage room. It wasn't far, but the hallway was narrow, close enough that I could smell her perfume, faint and clean. When she turned to unlock the door, her shoulder brushed mine. Just a second, nothing deliberate. But I felt my pulse rise like I'd done something wrong. The box thudded down on the table, dust floating in the light from the small window. She dusted her hands, glanced at me, then smiled, tired but real. "You remind me of someone," she said quietly.
Yeah?
"My son's age." The words caught me off guard. I tried to smile, but it came out uneven. "Guess that makes me feel young and awkward all over again." Her laugh was soft, almost affectionate. Then it faded, replaced by something gentler, sadder. "I didn't mean it that way," she said. "You just pay attention. Most people your age don't." I wanted to tell her that I noticed because it was her. The way she lingered before closing a folder, or how she looked out the window before answering a question. But I didn't. She handed me her thermos, the one with the dented lid, and said, "Could you refill this for me?" Our fingers brushed when I took it. That brief, unintentional contact sent a strange calm through me. The kind that only exists when you know something shouldn't happen, but you still hope it might. That night, while washing my mug, I realized I was still thinking about the way her eyes softened when she said thank you. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The week shifted without warning. Meetings, new reports, a new intern in the department, small things that rearranged the air. She was busier. I told myself that was the only reason she didn't stop by my desk anymore. When I passed her office, her door stayed half shut, open enough to see her silhouette moving behind the frosted glass, but closed enough to remind me of boundaries. On Thursday, we ended up in the break room at the same time. Pure accident. She was pouring coffee, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, small details that shouldn't have mattered but did. The faint sound of the drip machine filled the quiet. I reached for a mug, hesitated. "You stopped drinking tea," I said. She smiled faintly. "Did I? You used to make jasmine in the afternoons." She murmured, stirring sugar into her cup. I ran out. Her tone was neutral, practiced. But she kept stirring long after the sugar dissolved. A colleague from accounting walked in, middle-aged, friendly. He looked between us and smiled like he knew something. "Burning the midnight oil again, you too," he teased. She laughed, too quickly. "Just caffeine, not commitment." The moment deflated. I mumbled something about an email and left before the silence could explain itself. That evening, I stayed late again. The building emptied around 8. When I went to return some files, her light was still on. She looked up, startled. "Oh, you're still here. So are you." She leaned back, removed her glasses, rubbed her eyes. I lost track of time. Her voice sounded thinner than usual, tired. I hesitated at the doorway, then stepped inside. The air felt different, quieter, but heavier. "Do you ever get tired of pretending you like this place?" I asked before thinking. Her eyebrows lifted. Then she smiled, a small, cracked kind of smile. "All the time," she said. "But pretending keeps the lights on." I nodded. The hum of the computer fan filled the space between us. She looked at me for a long moment. The kind of look that feels like a question you don't know how to answer. Then she said, softly, "You shouldn't stay so late. People will talk." I tried to joke. "Let them. We're just drinking imaginary tea." But she didn't laugh. Her eyes stayed on mine, searching for something. "You're kind," she said finally. "Don't mistake that for anything else." That pause between that and anything else lasted too long. I stepped closer. Enough to smell her perfume. Something faintly citrus, worn from the day. She didn't move away. Her hand brushed the folder I was holding, steadying it, or steadying herself, I couldn't tell. For a second, the world went still, her breath, the flicker of light on her glasses, the quiet hum of air conditioning. Then her phone rang. The sound cut clean through everything. She turned, answering it with a practiced calm, voice clipped, professional. I stood there, still halfway in the moment, half out of it, until she glanced back at me and mouthed, "Go." Walking home that night, I replayed that almost moment again and again. The space between her words, the silence that said more than her voice ever could. We hadn't crossed any lines. But I could feel the shape of one forming beneath my feet. It was raining when it happened. The soft, steady kind that blurs everything outside but makes the world inside sound sharper. She'd offered me a ride home. Said it so casually I almost missed the weight of it. "Your bus stops too far in this weather," she'd said, picking up her umbrella. "I don't mind." I wanted to say you shouldn't, but I didn't. The car smelled faintly of citrus and paper, her perfume and the faint trace of her office. She drove with both hands on the wheel, eyes steady on the road, as if anything more casual might say too much. We stopped at a light. The rain hit the windshield in rhythmic bursts. She said, "You didn't have to stay late today." I wasn't staying for work, I admitted, before I could stop myself. That made her glance at me. A quick flick of her eyes, then back to the road. "Then what for?" I didn't answer. The silence filled with the sound of wipers scraping glass. We pulled into a small lot near my building. She didn't turn the engine off. I could see my reflection in the window. My own awkward stillness. "I shouldn't have asked you for a ride," I said. She smiled faintly. "You didn't," I offered. Her tone was calm, but I heard something underneath it. Something that sounded like guilt dressed as kindness. She looked straight ahead. "You're young," she said finally. "You don't know how quickly things blur. How easy it is to mistake warmth for something else." "I know what I feel," I said quietly. "I just don't know what to do with it." That broke something in the air. Her breath hitched, not a sigh exactly but close. She turned toward me then, really turned, her face half lit by the dashboard glow. "I can't she started, then stopped. "You remind me of a time when I thought things could be simple." The rain softened, turning into a light drizzle. I wanted to reach for her hand resting on the gear shift, not to hold it, just to prove the moment was real. But I didn't move. Neither did she. A car drove past, its headlights flashing across the interior. She blinked, like she'd been pulled out of something. "People talk," she said quietly. "I know. It's not just that. I know that too." For a long moment we sat there, two people pretending they hadn't already said everything. Finally, she exhaled, "You should go. Before the rain starts again." I nodded, reaching for the door handle. But before I could open it, she said my name. Soft, barely above a whisper. When I looked back, she was smiling. Not the polite one. The real one. The kind that meant "This hurts, but it's ours." Her voice warbled just enough to make it human. "Do you ever wish you'd met someone at a different time?" She didn't wait for an answer, and I didn't give one. The next week, she changed. No big announcement. No argument, just small disappearances. Shorter replies. Fewer smiles. Her door stayed closed most days, blinds tilted halfway down like she wanted the light but not the view. It wasn't punishment, that was the worst part. It was distance disguised as normal. At first, I convinced myself she was busy. Then that she was tired. Then, finally, that maybe she regretted something I hadn't realized we'd done. On Wednesday, she walked past me in the hallway, holding a folder tight against her chest. I said, "Morning." She said, "Good morning," but didn't look up. The warmth in her voice was gone. That night I sat in my apartment staring at my phone, drafting a message I didn't send. "You okay? You seemed different." Deleted it. Too personal. "Need me to stay late tomorrow." Deleted that too. Too eager. I ended up typing nothing. Just left the screen glowing until it dimmed on its own. 2 days later, she wasn't at work. HR said she'd taken a few days off. Personal reasons. The words sat heavy in my chest, like I'd inhaled too much silence. I tried to bury myself in spreadsheets, in noise, in coffee that tasted too strong. But every time I looked at her office door, I thought about the car, the rain, and the question she never let me answer. Monday she was back. Different, brighter in some way that didn't reach her eyes. She wore a scarf I hadn't seen before. Something soft lavender, elegant. I caught her in the break room pouring tea. "Jasmine." The scent hit me before her voice did. "Did you have a good week off?" I asked, careful. She looked at me, almost startled, then smiled too quickly. "I visited my son," she said. "He's moving in with his father for a while. It's complicated. Her tone was light, but her hands trembled when she set the mug down. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She waited a second, maybe expecting me to say something kind or understanding. When I didn't, she filled the space herself. It's good, she said. For him, for everyone. And just like that, the distance between us turned into something heavier, something named. That night, I stayed late again. Out of habit. The office was quiet except for the low hum of the vending machine. Her door was closed, but the light was on. I stood there for a long time, debating whether to knock. In the end, I didn't. I walked home through streets slick with leftover rain, phone in my pocket, thumb hovering over her number. Typed a message, hope you got home safe. Didn't send it. Just watched the blinking cursor, like it might finish the sentence for me. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It happened on a Sunday. By chance again, though I was starting to think fate just liked small coincidences. I saw her at the corner cafe near the park. The one with the fogged windows and quiet music that never matched the leather. She was alone, nursing a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold. Her coat was folded beside her, scarf draped neatly on top, always neat. I almost walked past. I should have, but something in her posture, the small, tired curve of her shoulders, made me stop. When she looked up, there was no surprise. Only that soft, knowing expression she wore when she'd already decided how the conversation would end. Hey, I said. She gestured to the seat across from her. You look like you could use caffeine too. We sat there, the table between us small but sufficient. She stirred her coffee slowly, though it didn't need stirring. You weren't at work Friday, I said finally. I wasn't feeling great. Better now. She nodded, eyes fixed on the swirl in her cup. Better enough. The hum of the espresso machine filled the silence. Outside, someone's umbrella flipped inside out. We both watched it, pretending it was interesting. Then she said, "You don't have to keep checking on me." "I'm not," I said too fast. She glanced up, waited. "I just worry," I finished quietly. Something flickered in her eyes. Not annoyance, but something sadder. "I know," she said. "And that's exactly why you shouldn't." We sat in the echo of that. I wanted to argue, to tell her that caring wasn't a crime, that she'd become the rhythm of my days without even trying. But I didn't know how to say it without sounding young, reckless, or ungrateful. Finally, she sighed. "Do you know what scared me most that night? In the car." I shook my head. "That I didn't want it to stop raining." Her voice trembled on the word stop. She looked at me then, directly, fully. And it felt like standing too close to something bright. "I wanted to stay there," she whispered. "In that space where it wasn't wrong yet. Where nothing had to happen, but everything might." I swallowed hard. I did too. The honesty startled both of us. For a moment neither of us moved. The air between us stretched thin, fragile as glass. Then she reached across the table and rested her hand near mine. Not touching, but close enough that the warmth reached me anyway. Her voice softened. "What can't stay in that space forever?" "I know," I said. She smiled. The same warm smile that had started all of this. Then, quietly, "Thank you for seeing me." I didn't say anything back. I just turned my hand slightly, enough for my fingertips to brush hers. She didn't pull away. Just looked at me and said, barely above a whisper, "Okay." It's strange how easily things return to rhythm. The office hums again, printers' footsteps, the faint tapping of keyboards. Time, relentless as ever, just keeps moving. It's been 6 months since that Sunday, long enough for the air between us to change shape. We still talk, small things now. Project updates, casual questions, tea refills. But underneath, something softer has settled, not longing, not avoidance, something closer to calm. She drinks jasmine again. I switched from coffee to tea too, though I pretend it's just to sleep better. She never calls me out on it. Sometimes, she leaves the thermos on my desk when she leaves early. I wash it, always. It's an unspoken exchange, small, domestic, almost tender. On Thursdays I take lunch alone at the park near the office. Once she passed by, carrying a paper bag and a book. She sat on the other end of the bench, the one that faces the pond. For a while we didn't speak. Just listened. Ducks shuffling near the water, the low murmur of a distant fountain. Then she said, 8:47. I looked over. What about it? That's when you used to come in every morning. Always the same time. I used to guess what mood you were in by how you said hello. I smiled. And what did you guess most days? She took a sip of tea from her thermos. That you were pretending not to care about something you cared about too much. I laughed under my breath. Still not wrong. She turned slightly, eyes warm but steady. I'm glad you stayed. That was all, no confession, no promises. Just two people who had finally learned how to exist without the ache of what if. Later, when I passed her office, she was typing, hair pinned loosely, a half-drunk mug beside her. She looked up, caught me watching and smiled, the same soft, too warm smile that had started everything. Except now, it didn't sting, it just felt right. Not a beginning, not an ending, just life, steady and quietly full. Sometimes on rainy evenings she still offers me a ride home. I still hesitate before saying yes, and she still pretends not to notice. We talk about nothing, traffic, books, the weather. But every now and then, she glances my way when we stop at a light, and there's a silence that feels like a memory neither of us wants to disturb. I've stopped needing to name it. It's enough that it's there. Last week, she left early again. On her desk, a small sticky note on my report read, "Good work. And thank you for still noticing." I smiled at that. Folded the note and slipped it into the back of my notebook. The same one she'd once returned months ago. Some things, I've learned, don't need to be finished to be complete.